Hey there, and welcome to my final devlog on my indie game summit. As the time between updates increases and I'm more and more covered with other projects, mainly building my piano learning startup Magic Keys, I decided to take a deep breath and make one last push to finally finish my indie game summit. The goal has been within arm's reach for quite a while now, but I finally reached a point where I'm comfortable with shipping this thing. With 1,265 art assets, 311 sound effects and 30 pieces of original soundtrack coming together for an average playtime of over 10 hours, I've probably spent nothing short of 1,000 hours on this project. So it's time to move on and release this thing to the wild. It's been quite a journey since I uploaded my first devlog of the game on April the 1st, 2020. We were just at the beginning of the pandemic and I was still in a rather optimistic early pandemic mood. Hey, let's enjoy a few weeks of downtime and focus 100% on making an awesome new game. And I gotta say, these first few weeks were among the most productive in my entire life. I fondly remember entering regular flow states, and thanks to the COVID restrictions, I had an incredibly tight daily routine, one that's almost impossible with the distractions of normal life. So after about 2 to 3 months, I had a working demo which contained many of the core mechanics and the foundations of the first 2 areas in the game, many of which remained almost unchanged. I gave the demo to some friends, and since the reactions were pretty positive, I honestly thought I'd put in a few more months of work and the game will be done, ready to release. And with proper planning and execution, this could have even turned out to be true. But of course, after a while, the usual suspects appeared to the scene. The general burst of initial motivation started to wear off. Feature creep started to become a thing. I kept expanding the world, adding new areas, and in return needed new features, mechanics, and of course art to fill these new places. Meanwhile, COVID restrictions started to relax and social activities returned, ready to take up some of this oh-so-productive time. So basically the scope of the game increased while my working time decreased. Not a good recipe to complete something. Then, after the summer of 2020, my days as a student were ending and I took up a full-time job at an indie game studio. While this was an amazing opportunity, it naturally meant I would be working 40 hours on another game, leaving only so much time and mental capacity to work on finishing my own indie game. And fast forward, this situation of working full-time on other projects has remained pretty much the same ever since. And while I had occasional bursts of progress, I realized that the scope and the level of polish I had in mind for the game just isn't realistic anymore with the time and resources I have. Fine, open Unity Hub, remove the project. Wait, this would have been the easy way out, just another abandoned and unreleased project. But not this time. I've spent a huge amount of time and will say that I'm proud of the results. It's a solid game. There are many parts where I could have done better, but at what cost? It's not perfect, but it's something way better. It's completed. So, in order to achieve this, I took up a role that I've almost completely neglected before, that probably most solo indie developers are neglecting, that of the producer. I started producing my own game, managing resources and making cuts. Even though I didn't have any monetary budget for the game, I didn't pay myself for it, I still had to take the same considerations. How much more time am I willing to spend to complete the game, and therefore which parts have highest priority and which have to be cut. So I made a list of remaining issues and rated them in terms of how bad is the issue and how much effort is it to fix it. Also, which tasks are important to fill in the gaps towards a complete game and which ones would just add more content. So with a few of these tools I began making cuts. No more let's do that later, but rather this will never make it into the game. And this actually felt great. Just deciding on what not to do even felt like progress. After all, it brought the game further to completion. So, what did I actually do besides cutting things? Luckily, the bulk of the game's content, including the mechanics, the world and the level design, has already been there for quite a while. In terms of size, it's pretty massive for a one-man show. In hindsight, it's definitely too massive to fill up every corner with exciting stuff, but at least I tried. One thing I did was revise the level design in certain areas that had one of several issues. Either the section didn't have a good flow. For platformers, you really want players who have mastered the game's movement system to move smoothly and gracefully through the level. Certain elements like waiting for moving platforms or awkward jumps can be annoying and disrupt this feeling of flow. Other sections just didn't fit in terms of the difficulty curve. They were way too hard or too easy compared to their surroundings. Or similarly, some had to be changed for better pacing, meaning that after a particularly hard and long section, the player might not want to immediately be challenged with another deadly jump again. Another big one was enemies. The game's focus has always been movement and exploration. Combat has been added at some point, but it never really integrated as smoothly as I wanted to. Now, at this point, it just felt too overwhelming to completely redesign the combat system from scratch, so I tried to tweak it to a reasonable level of fun. Another part that goes hand in hand is the enemy design and behavior. I know that I can do so much better, but for this game, it just has to be enough. In any case, I learned a lot about 2D combat and enemy behavior, and I definitely want to focus on that in some future game. Besides these major areas, there were just plenty of smaller things scattered all over the place. A few missing sound effects here, some empty level space there, a quirky player input bug here, some terrain glitches there. Beyond that, there was still quite a bit of late game content that wasn't properly implemented. These are the parts that I don't want to spoil in the devlog, so let's not speak about it. What I can tell you is that there may be more than one ending, and there is a not insignificant amount of post-game content, which luckily has already been too far in development to be scrapped entirely. So, what have I learned from this large-scale game project? Luckily, when seeing the development of the game all the way through the end, there is always such a great deal of new things to learn, that it becomes a rewarding and worthwhile experience for that reason alone. There are just so many details which you won't encounter when only sticking with prototypes or game jams. Here's a quick run through several lessons I've learned. Unity can handle a lot of simultaneous loaded content. Scene management at runtime might not be necessary. Behavior trees are a great way to build enemy and boss behavior. Having discrete safe spots makes serialization so much easier. Tile maps are great for rapid prototyping. Designing good boss fights is very hard and time consuming. Finishing the core mechanics early on is a must. Backgrounds are hard to get right in a vertical scrolling 2D world. Get your sorting layers organized and assign them carefully. Fire and forget is sometimes a valid strategy for art and sound effects. A quick and dirty solution is better than getting stuck on implementing the ideal solution. But don't forget to refactor your code regularly. When you don't have any deadlines, create artificial ones. I am really excited to finally close this chapter and start with a fresh game idea. Despite all the hardships, making games is just such a beautiful thing. After pushing it back for like over 10 times, I have set my final release date for Summit to April 28. That's pretty soon, and I don't have a lot of wish lists, nor will I do any additional marketing other than what I'm doing on this and maybe a few other of my channels. I just don't have the time and mental capacity for this project anymore to do so. So realistically, I don't have any expectations that the game will be a monetary success, so I've set a very moderate price point of $5 minus a launch discount even. I am grateful for each and every player finding their way to the game and hopefully having a good time. That being said, see you guys soon in a fresh new devlog. Cheers!